Looky there, the chair. I give you something free. Carry the chair. You leave it laying out there. Boy, lucky for you I came along.
My dad, Gene Baker, was a born entertainer. I asked him how that came to be, what with him being born to a family of farmers, a family with no history of performance or entertainment outside of piano, fiddle, and church choirs. But there must have been something in the genetics. His brother Terry is also a gifted performer, makeup artist, and athlete. My sisters have a predilection for singing on command and engaging in several community theater performances annually. Having cut my teeth in radio, as my father before me, I rarely pass up the opportunity to speak into a microphone. Dad had no real answer to where this obsession, this mania came from, other than to say that his performances would often help him in school.
As I have noted in other places, I was not a particularly bright student. Had to get along as best I could, kind of improvise. So if I felt I was falling behind in something, I would volunteer to do a speech or some sort of a little plaything. Maybe something we had in a lesson, I would dramatize it and perform that, which usually got me an A, which would bolster the other stuff. As I got older and got into junior high and high school, we did plays as a class. And so I learned a little of the stagecraft from there.
When he shared that story, I felt it mirror my own experience in school. I would often, to great acclaim from my teachers, produce audio or video pieces to help bolster my own grades. For Dad, in addition to performing for a grade, he took up the promotional duties for school theatrical productions, which put him into the orbits of local TV and radio broadcasters.
By doing publicity, they gave me a chance to go visit radio and TV stations and tell them what we were doing. And sometimes it would just be a presentation to them. Sometimes they would invite me on to tell about it. So that was kind of the beginning, I guess, of the radio and television. And then in high school, we got more involved and more involved. And I got to know several of the announcers and people in television in Indianapolis, which was a small market at that time. We had 2, maybe 3 TV stations that served the area. And I could take some of the talent from the shows and we would go there and present a little synopsis, a little scene from the show and plug it. So that's kind of how I got into radio and television. Enjoyed it, liked doing it. I guess I did reasonably well because I got involved to come and have my own programs at certain points.
Dad even helped set up Carmel High School's radio station, a station that I worked at for 3 years during my high school career. I knew the station started the year after he graduated, but Dad never told me about his involvement with the station until years after I was through the program.
Mr. Lemmy, who was the principal at Carmel High School, was an engineer. He liked doing engineering kind of things. So he got a frequency assigned to them, an educational frequency, and put the radio station on the air, WHJE. And at the time, it was strictly an engineering kind of thing. And I was working at WFMS at that time. And so he called me and said, "Oh, could you come and teach a little class or, tell the kids how to do a station break and and when to do it and all that kind of thing." Yeah, sure, I can do that. So I went and said, station breaks are done on the hour and you have to give frequency and location and call letters and all of these things to meet the FCC requirements of a legal break. So I said kind of offhand, does anyone here really want to get into broadcasting, be a broadcaster, and Mr. Lemmy jumped right in on that and says, no, we're not here to be on the air, we're not air personalities, we're here to learn the nuts and bolts and the engineering aspect. I was like, oh, fine, good. Have a good day. And so that was about it. And then later on, of course, it went the other way and became an actual broadcast station with people doing things, which you are aware of.
Dad would go on to have a fairly successful career in radio, spanning the decades at multiple stations, including WFMS, WFBM, which is now WFBQ, and WBRI, WXIR.
Well, I was at WFMS when Kennedy was shot. I was the one who made the official announcement of being dead on WFYI, or not WFYI, WFMS.
Dad would also produce children's programming for the radio. In fact, I have several of his children's records in storage, along with his reel-to-reel tape player and mixing board. As the technology began to advance, he was an early adopter of the Betamax home entertainment system, showing a skilled hand at creating home movies.
Well, here we are, June the 10th, 8 o'clock. Trailer all hooked up, everything packed. Kitty's in the car, and there's somewhere. Everybody but Renee, there she comes. Looks like we're ready to go. Here we are on the sandy beaches of St. Augustine, where we see people out there playing in the surf. Only just a few minutes ago it was a parking area. It doesn't take long for the surf to come rolling in. Uh-oh, as is witnessed by this poor fellow. All for a little walk up the beach, only to come back in a few minutes and discover that the beach and the ocean has come up to see your car. Well, Saturday was January 30th, and it rained, and there was no snow at all left from the previous rain, all washed away. And then Saturday afternoon, it started to snow again. By Sunday, the 31st of January, 82, everything was snowed in. And then came Monday, the 1st of February, time to start digging out again. Here we shoveled through 18 inches of snow, in some places as high as 23 in other areas where it had drifted due to the heavy winds. But things start to get back to normal again. Although traffic still isn't going, you shovel out to the edge of your road and then wait for the snowplow. Well, are there any signs of snowplows? Doesn't look like from that away. How about the other way? No, nothing there. Although there is evidence that somebody has been through. If you have a four-wheel vehicle or a large truck with dual tires, which is what has been through here, you could go. But with the little family car, well, you just sort of wait for the snowplow or someone else to come along. Of course, there are other ways. If you have a tractor and a snowblower, you can clean out your driveway a little faster.
This skill was no doubt developed when he was a young man first starting out with Gene Baker Presents, where he would produce local theater and magic shows. Gene Baker Presents would later become Gene Baker Productions, where he had a dream of producing direct-to-consumer, wholesome entertainment. And he sent out this spec program to potential backers.
Hi, I'm Gene Baker, and I'm sure that we all watch a lot of television in this day and age, but do we really enjoy it? Well, with all the broadcast programs and now cable and satellite, we certainly have a lot of choices, but they're still all basically the same program. And up until recently, we had to watch them whenever the cable company or the broadcast station decided to send them to us. But now with VCRs, we are able to do some time shifting and watch them at our convenience. However, they are still basically the same programs. What I would like to do, with your help, is to produce quality, low-budget programming that we can directly market to the home consumer to use their VCRs to program their own televisions the way that they can now time shift or go down and rent an old movie. I would like, along with your help, to produce programs of high moral content and as well as being entertaining that the people could watch as a family unit and not be embarrassed or afraid of what might be coming next. And I guess what we need to know now is who can we get to help us do that.
While he never came out and said it, I always believed Dad fancied himself as something of a cross between Walt Disney and Fred Rogers.
Here I am out in the woods. You like to go out in the woods? You know, there's a lot of things that live in woods. We live in houses, of course, but not everyone has a house to live in. Although I suppose it's a house for them, like the insects and the rabbits and the squirrels and all the people who live in a woods like this one. There are trees for the birds to live in, places in the ground for the rabbits and the squirrels, and all the other little creatures that like to live there. A little stream for fish and other water kind of things. Just a lot of things live in the woods, none the least of which are bears, you know. But bears are fun. They're a lot like people, or at least we can pretend that they are. We could even pretend that they like to do things like go on picnics.
Family obligations kept him from pursuing these dreams at the level he would have hoped. He left radio in the 90s when he saw a tide shift coming, the digital revolution. When I was going through the WHJE program in the early 2000s, Dad told me that he wished that he had access to the digital nonlinear technology that I did. But sadly for me, he said, even if I learned it, no one would hire a man in his 60s. I'd go on to work in local TV news and later as a producer at WFYI, and now I run my own little business, creating videos for clients. When I first started to show an interest in video production, with those high school projects, Dad took me to a broadcast equipment retailer in Indianapolis. I remember looking at the very expensive tape-to-tape linear editors, and Dad wanted to know if I was serious, and he told me that he'd be willing to spend the money. We never did buy those linear machines, thank goodness, and I went on to college to pursue a career in radio before being guided by fate to video production. As we were going through his things after his death, I found a note he had written not too long before he died. Ask Bill what he needs to complete his studio. We'll pay. As I've been digitizing his old beta tapes, I can't help but wonder what Dad would have done with the technology and tools that I have access to today. While he was sick, I'd spend every Saturday night with him watching Svengoolie, a horror host out of Chicago. I told him that I'd like to produce a program like that. I have no interest in being the host or being on camera. As you can probably tell from watching this, I'm not that great at it. But I'd like to create something fun and silly and lighthearted that could bring families together. At that time, I had no idea of the spec program he'd sent out 40 years prior to this conversation, using almost the same wording. All he said in response was, "If I were 30 years younger, I'd do it with you."
I wanted to make movies. I was always a big movie fan. I thought, well, if I could make movies, that would be something that would live on after me and hopefully bring joy to people in years to come. That would be a nice thing to do. And by doing that, I could bring happiness and fun to people who aren't even born yet.
Dad, like I told you before you left us, you brought joy and happiness to more people than you could ever know. From your management of the Carmel Movie Theater, your ownership of the Zionsville Theater, your ownership of the Carmel Ice Cream Shop, your stage productions and magic shows, your radio programs, and the generations of kids you drove to and from school for 49 years. People know you. People remember you. I've never heard anyone say anything bad about you. But what I didn't know at that time was of this catalog of home movies you left behind for us to rediscover. You fulfilled your goal. You left something behind that is living on beyond your physical self. The memories you saved for us here in the present. To see people and hear the voices who have long since left. Through your skills, I got to see and hear my great-grandmother for the first time. I got to see and hear the voices of my aunts and grandparents who have passed on. And of course, getting to be with you once more.
Okay, Bill Baker, you want us to read this story? Just a brave little tailor.
No, even.
And this Mickey Mouse.
Thank you for being you. I hope I can live up to your fine example, not only as a professional, but as a man, husband, and father.
Every time the Giants sat down on a house, he crushed it.
Thank everyone who's listened to me over the years, tuned in the radio stations and TV stations where I've worked, enjoyed the movies at the theaters, and thanks a lot. It's been all in all a good life. Now I think we pretty much covered everything. Thank you for your attention and your questions and for preserving me for a little longer, even if I don't survive. I'll be here in video form, which I guess is somewhat appropriate since that's how I spend so much of my time.